For the SNP, Patricia Gibson.
Thank you, Dr Huck. I'm delighted to participate in this debate on behalf of the SNP on regional inequalities and child poverty, and I want to pay tribute to the Honourable Lady from Blaydon who brought this to the floor of Westminster Hall, although I echo her sentiments that for us to be debating this in the UK in 2022 is an absolute disgrace. But when it comes to child poverty, of course, from Scotland's perspective, it really is a tale of two governments. In Scotland, under the SNP, we see a progressive government on a mission to tackle child poverty, even though 85% of welfare is reserved to the UK government. Tackling child poverty is at the heart of the new Scottish budget, a budget which, it has to be said, must be balanced by law every year. But yet, the Scottish child payment has been doubled. Just as the UK Government scrapped targets to reduce child poverty, the Scottish Government set forth ambitious targets to eradicate child poverty with the limited powers it has. Just as the Scottish Government doubles the child payment to £20, so the UK Government cruelly cut £20 per week from those same families when it cut universal credit, knowing as it did, and this is the thing, knowing that when it made that cut, it was pushing thousands of families into poverty. The contrast between the Tory UK Government and the SNP Scottish Government could not be clearer. And there can be no doubt that the Scottish child payment delivered by the Scottish Government is the most ambitious child poverty reduction measure in the whole of the UK. In contrast, the UK Government delivered overnight the biggest cut to welfare support in over 70 years. And it's deeply disappointing that the UK Government has ignored the Work and Pension Select Committee report, which outlined numerous proposals that the UK Government should implement to tackle the growing scandal of child poverty. There is no strategy from this Government or any measurable objectives against which it can be held to account on this issue. And if I'm wrong about that, the Minister will be able to tell us when he gets to his feet, or he can intervene, what the plan is to tackle this and what measurable objectives are, what they are, against which we can hold this Government to account and measure the progress that they are making in tackling this scourge. Or perhaps the Government simply hopes that child poverty will go away, will shut up, will stop talking about it, or perhaps it's simply not a priority. It would be good to have clarity on this. If this Government is genuinely serious about tackling child poverty, then it should reintroduce targets. It should have UK-wide statutory child poverty targets which will allow us to measure the progress that is or has not been made in tackling this problem. In Scotland, plans to tackle child poverty was backed by real action, a £50 million Tackling Child Poverty Action Fund. The UK Government, of course, could replicate that work in the absence of any of its own ideas, apparently, to confront this scandal. The Scottish budget for 22-23 tackles child poverty and inequality by targeting over £4 billion in social security and welfare payments, including £197 million committed to the game-changing Scottish child payment from next month. And it will extend that to all under 16s. And it's expected around 430,000 children living in low-income households could be eligible from that point. In line with the Scottish Fiscal Commission forecasts, the Scottish Government is committed to over £3.9 billion for benefit expenditure in 22-23 to provide support to over 1 million people. And the extent of the Scottish Government's commitment to tackling child poverty is illustrated by the fact that this is £361 million above the level of funding to be received by the UK Government through the block grant adjustment, showing that the investment the Scottish Government is making in the people of Scotland is key to the national mission of tackling child poverty. Now, the latest report by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation on UK Poverty 2022 reveals that child poverty in the UK continues to rise. Almost 1 in 3 children across the UK live in poverty. Nearly half of children in single-parent households live in poverty. Larger families and single-parent families have particularly high levels of poverty rates. Across the whole of Ayrshire, and in my constituency of North Ayrshire and Arran, around 1 in 4 children live in poverty. But the numbers, of course, are rising as many families find they are overwhelmed with the cost of living crisis as essential household costs soar. Now, whilst the welfare support is to increase by 3.1% in April, inflation, as we've heard today, is expected to reach around 7%. So that figure shows that there is a real terms cut in welfare support. And with the best will in the world, parents, families are doing their very best. But for far too many, poverty has them in its grip. Poverty in working households is at its highest, and those in work now face not just a cost of living crisis, but from next month, national insurance hikes as they already face unsustainable financial pressure. And so much for making work pay. And it's shocking that the government's response to child poverty simply is not evolving to meet the growing challenges of inequality. And that's why we have amongst the highest levels of inequality in Europe. Inequality which is all too evident in my constituency of North Ayrshire and Arran. Because support is being eroded by inflation. Families are increasingly borrowing to pay essential household bills, leaving them dangerously exposed to unsustainable debt, potentially destroying families. John Dickey, the director of the Child Poverty Action Group in Scotland, agrees that the Scottish Government is doing all it can to tackle child poverty. But we all know that the full range of powers to make proper inroads into this are reserved to Westminster. So I hope the Minister, because like many people in this room, I've participated in a number of debates on child poverty, and I hope the Minister is not going to do the same thing that always happens and get to his feet and simply lay out what he believes his government is already doing, because clearly, as he's heard from every speech today, what is already being done is simply not enough. The numbers are rising. The facts speak for themselves. More needs to be done. So what we need to hear from the Minister is what this government's plan is and where are its targets to deal with this social blight. And until and unless the government seeks to seriously grapple with the shame and scandal of child poverty, it can forget about making meaningful inroads into the poverty-related attainment gap. It simply can't be done. Because poverty is a scourge and hungry children cannot reach their potential. The effect of poverty on those whose lives it's touched is corrosive, and I agree with the points made by the Honourable Lady from Durham. For children, poverty colours their world view. It impacts on their self-esteem. It limits their ambitions. It imposes limitations on their success in school, as well as their social relationships. Its shadow is a strong determiner of health outcomes well into adulthood. It shortens too many lives far before their time. Ultimately, poverty kills. And however well a child might do in life against all the odds, having grown up in deep poverty, the shadow of that experience never goes away, even as an adult. And I know this because I myself grew up in poverty. And that's why I believe that as a society, we need to do all we can to protect children from that damaging and corrosive experience so that they can grow into healthy adults, into fully rounded, healthy citizens. So I'm very keen to hear what the Minister has to say in response to this debate. We don't need to hear measures that he thinks have already been put in place. We need to hear what the plan for the future is. What more will be done? We need targets towards which this government will work to tackle this very serious social issue and against which we can hold his government to account. And I hope that is what we will hear in the response. But I doubt that the Minister will say anything that will dissuade me from the steadfast view that we in Scotland, who wish to build a fairer, more equal and more just society, can only do so with the full range of powers at the disposal of the Scottish Parliament in an independent Scotland. Then we can build the kind of society that we want to see for our children.